Welcome in, folks. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. Today we have something special planned for you. A huge Rams fan and analyst, myself, and a huge Niners fan and analyst, Jonnydels over here. He reached out to me on Twitter, and I was so excited to be able to collab with him. I'm a big fan of the channel that he has. He's got some great quality content, so we're teaming up here to give you some great quality content. So before we get into it, be sure to subscribe, like, and of course comment at any point if anything comes up that you want to talk about. And let's dive right in. What's up, Johnny?
Not much, man. Glad we could do this both times.
Yeah. I was like, you could just let them know. We've literally recorded this twice.
Hopefully we have some of those golden nuggets that came out the first time are able to make it the second time. We had some technical difficulties. Probably my fault.
Probably not. More like Zencaster's fault. Let's be honest here.
We'll just blame
Zencaster.
But man, I'm so glad that you responded to my DM. I was like, man, this guy's got a blue check mark. He's going to think I'm just some crazy guy that's bugging at him. So, I just sent him a message, said, hey, I'm a 49ers film guy. I love to watch the film and analyze the game. And I saw he does some really good stuff on his end. The same thing. I thought, let's have a meeting of the minds and see if we can't have a good preview for both of our audiences. And bring the other team's perspective for what is going to be a rivalry game here on Monday night. As 49ers fans, we like to believe that the Seahawks game is the real rivalry. I think that's more just because they keep beating us and we keep losing and we hate them. But the Rams, to me, are the real rival because the Seahawks, let's be honest, last year, they were not in it. When you have both teams from the same division in the NFC Championship game, and it comes down to a 3-point game, and it's who's going to go, face off for the Super Bowl title. That is a rivalry, and so thank you so much for accepting the idea.
Yeah, I thought it was a great idea, and it's, believe it or not, this is week 4, and I don't think I've done a collab yet. And normally I've already interviewed a bunch of people, and whatnot, but no, I haven't done anything yet. So this is the first time. I haven't done one. I have all these shows and I haven't had any guests on. So you are the first guest of the year. That, at least on my side, it is a collab, so it'll be on both of our channels. So be sure, if you watch it on his, you can watch it on mine if you want to give me some credit. If you watch on mine, be sure to watch it on his as well. You don't have to sit there and watch the full thing, but maybe hit the thumbs up, whatever, does go a long way. So let's get into it, right? We got the Rams offense taking on the 49ers defense, and I feel like this is really the pivotal matchup here because the 49ers defense, I think, is the one side of the ball that could completely destroy the game. When you look at that front four, and if they're able to get pressure on Stafford without blitzing, it's going to be a long day for the Rams. The offensive line, I think, has played better in recent weeks than people are giving it credit for. And I think that happens, when you lose your starting center due to an injury, and you have to move your starting right guard to center, and you have to bring in another right guard. He gets hurt. All of a sudden, the mainstream media is out there like watching all these injuries, and they're like, oh, their offensive line is done. It's over. It's not going to have. And then you look and you're like, oh, they played pretty decently against the Falcons. They were definitely very good against the Cardinals. So only allowing 1 sack on Matthew Stafford. And Havenstein, the right tackle, who I think is the top 10 tackle in football right now, he just had a bad game, and he got banged up a little bit, so we'll see how he responds. But, I think when you look at this offense versus the 49ers defense, it's going to come down to that to start. And then, of course, as we brought up in the first recording, a lot of it anyway, Cooper Kupp. It's going to be very important for the 49ers to be able to funnel all of the targets away from Cooper Kupp. Force Matthew Stafford to have to go to Allen Robinson and other guys that he may not have that chemistry he has with Cooper Kupp with. So, Kupp in the first 5 games against the 49ers really wasn't great. And then the last 2, he's given them hell. And, I think the Rams are definitely going to try to get him involved. He does lead the league in most snaps with bracket coverage, but he's still been able to, make things happen. Almost over 300 yards for the season for the first 3 games. Sounds a little ridiculous that he's already been able to do that when everybody has their attention on him. Very impressive. So I think, the 49ers defense, guys in the back end of the secondary. First off, you look at Charvarius Ward. I'm a big fan of his game. Surprised me because I wasn't the biggest fan, with the Chiefs, but I think he's really fit in like a glove for the 49ers. Then you have guys like Mosley and Lenore, who, obviously you mentioned in the previous, recording we did, Lenore got picked on by Rodgers, man, like last year, like it was bad. But, they have good talent with, Tayshaun Gibson and Hufanga's been awesome. So, I think the secondary can pose a threat. I think when you look at the linebackers, you got Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner is all over the place. He has unlimited range. And I think a guy that he hasn't been utilized a ton this year, not the level he was towards the end of last year, but I still think he's great, is, Al Shire. I really think, he's an underrated, contributor there. And then I think when you look at the pass rush, you got obviously Nick Bosa, who you always have to know where he is at all times. And Samson Ebukam has had an emergence with the 49ers. He has 10 pressures on the season through the first 3 games. So going up against his former team, you might want to, put some extra emphasis on that. But Johnny, what do you think about this Rams offense versus the 49ers defense?
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to the Rams O-line versus the 49ers defensive line. And you mentioned Samson Ebukam, and yeah, you guys know him from his days there. I think one thing that has helped him in his transition and this kind of resurgence is he's in a very simplified scheme as far as the front four. The 49ers play, they borrowed this idea from Pete Carroll with the Seahawks, who actually borrowed it from George Seifert with the 49ers. But this idea of like a Leo defender, which is George Seifert used to call it the elephant, which was based upon, I'm totally blanking on his name, Charles Haley back in the day, that he called it the elephant because that was a call that meant they weren't going to change the rusher based upon the strength of the formation. George Seifert used to run a 3-4, and if they usually would rush the weak side outside linebacker, he would be in pass rush. Well, Haley was such a good pass rusher, they would make an elephant call. And in the playbook, it shows that meant that no matter where they shifted the strength of the formation, who they called to which side they called to rush the passer was going to rush the passer, was going to be basically a defensive end on that play, and usually that was Haley. And so they called it the elephant roll. Pete Carroll ended up calling it the Leo roll, which just meant it was an L word or E word for N or end, which just meant somebody on the flex side or the side away from the tight end. The 49ers like to put Nick Bosa in what they call the big end, which is somebody over the tight end. That's for run defense purposes because he's a bigger guy, and that means if he's going to be taking on double teams out there, if he's going to be responsible for having to play both in-out techniques, that he will be able to handle that. That means Ebukam only has to worry about the weak side edge. So he's able to just first set the weak side edge and then go rush the passer. So his job has been much more simplified there. He's not having to worry about either side. And they're constantly trying to scheme him onto that flex side. So I think that has given him a very just free to use his speed, use his burst to just do what he does, and that's why you're seeing an elevated performance. I think he's not a guy that's going to be a standout defensive end, but as a role player in that role, he's able to do that. He gives you that speed off the edge to match with a Nick Bosa. And so how does LA do that? Because if you decide to then make Ebukam the big end, and that's harder on him, well, now you've left Bosa without the ability to chip him. And how do you then, I mean, and he's such a game-changing guy. It's like Aaron Donald. You know, those are guys that they can change your game plan. You have to game plan around them. You cannot expect one-on-one your guys to beat them long term and to do well in the game. The linebacking core for San Francisco is a very strong linebacking core. I know I'm a little biased because I'm a 49ers fan, but I really do think they have one of the best linebacking cores in the NFL. Now, they are banged up. Alshire is most likely going to miss this game. He went out during the Broncos game, and Flanagan Foles, his backup, has been in, and he did not practice yesterday, Shire, so I doubt he's going to be playing Sunday. But against LA, you know, you guys like to run a lot of 11 personnel. You've been moving more to that kind of hybrid role. We talked about that in the first recording. That you're kind of moving to that hybrid role. So who is going to, you know, how are we going to operate? Are we going to be in mostly base? Or are we going to be in nickel? And you mentioned Lenore, you know, Diamador Lenore was a guy I did not expect him to come in the game against Denver. It had been Samuel Womack, our rookie, who had been in there the first 2 weeks, and they said Lenore just really flashed in practice because when he was an outside corner last year, you know, like I'd said, he got picked on by Aaron Rodgers, and he didn't start another game the whole year. I mean, he got absolutely abused by Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that was a game that we lost to Green Bay. Where Aaron Rodgers drove down the field with 37 seconds left and beat us. And he hit 2 big passes to Devontae Adams. And the second one that ended up putting them in field goal range was one of the most egregious lapses in coverage I have ever seen by a corner. Because we were playing a cover 2 zone, and he played it as a cover 4 zone, where cover 2 zone, you know, it was 2-man, and he played it like cover 4 zone. He had safety help over the top, and so when corners do that, they're supposed to play with an inside technique in a trail position because they have help over the top. He literally played with a 5-yard cushion the whole way, just backpedaling on like a 20-yard dig, and his safety is even farther back because he's supposed to be the deep help, and he literally just gave Adams a 20-yard dig route that they hit and kicked the field goal, and it cost us the game. He did not start the rest of the year. I mean, didn't hardly see the field the rest of the year. So, you know, I was not expecting him to come out, but then he showed up in Denver and played phenomenal. You know, we were able to hold Denver's offense to 9 points. Their other 2 points are from the play we shall not speak of. I mean, it was such a horrible cascade of events. Why your coach calls a blind rollout play action pass from your own 1.5 yard line, I don't even know. And then how your quarterback doesn't realize that he's, you know, after that rollout, he's only 3 yards away from the back of the end zone and doesn't decide to dirt the ball, you know, like just throw it away, man. Like, I don't get it. I mean, that was one of the most embarrassing moments in 49ers history right there. But you know, it's going to come down to can we create pressure, like you said, with the 4-man rush? Because if you can't do that, then you have to blitz Stafford. And like you had said, Stafford is very good against the blitz. He throws into the blitz, so he's going to exploit it. And you know, Cooper Kupp, you can't expect to guard him in space like that, because if you're blitzing, you're giving him more space to operate, and they move him all over the field, and he's particularly dangerous in the slot because you give that guy a 2-way go in space, it's over. I mean, it is over. And I've been really high on Cooper Kupp for a long time. Actually, he was my draft crush that year. We did a mock draft on a forum I was in, a 49ers fan forum for a while. And in that mock draft, I was given the Eagles. And I picked Cooper Kupp in the 3rd round and George Kittle in the 5th round.
You got George Kittle in the 5th round? I could not believe he fell. That was my draft crush. Him and Chris Godwin are who I wanted. I have never asked anybody who's been following me since 2016. I don't know if I've ever liked a prospect as much as I like George Kittle, because I'm like, what is there not to like? This guy, clearly he's being held back by CJ Beathard, and then you guys draft him 2 rounds before George Kittle, and I'm like, The reason you even got him in the 5th round is because CJ Beathard was his quarterback. I mean, it was mind-boggling. Anytime you can get a player out of Iowa, you know they have to block. Everybody has to block at Iowa. So you have that, like, aggression right off the bat. I interviewed Kittle. So, like, I had the privilege to talk with him, and like, he went through his whole, story, how, like, some of his credits didn't transfer. So, like, he had to take, like, extra, like, summer school, like, classes and whatnot. And he's just, like, first thing he told me, he's just like, yeah, you go to Iowa, you have to know how to block. He's like, that's like their moniker. Like, you have to know how to block. And it wasn't the blocking that necessarily, just being able to block. It's the way he did it. Like, even if this guy never ends up becoming a good receiving tight end, all I was thinking was, he's not just putting guys onto the grass. He's trying to put them through the grass. Like, he's trying to put them 6 feet under. And I just could not stop watching him on tape. It was one of the most fun, tape watches I think I've ever had with any prospect. So I fell in love with him. And then you saw the one-handed catch with that seam buster over the middle. That shouldn't have had to have been a one-handed catch. He's wide open. CJ Beathard like overthrows him. It's just stuff like that where I was like, this guy's special, man. And then he went in the 5th round. Sean McVay drafted Gerald Everett in the 2nd, and I was sitting there like, you got to be kidding me. Like, this is Sean McVay's guy. Like, you talk about blocking, and then you get this guy, and then they're talking about, well, Gerald Everett, he sees a lot of Jordan Reed in, and I'm like, because Jordan Reed's the best tight end in the NFL, right? I mean, like, come on.
We had him in 2020. I know all about Jordan Reed. I mean, the guy is more like a glorified wide receiver.
Yeah.
And that's interesting
Everett,
because,
kind of.
Right. I think that's the biggest difference you see between McVay and Shanahan is that McVay really leans into the passing game. And I mean, that's obviously, you see the passing game production is through the roof, and he likes those big name targets that can do everything in the passing game. And he's constantly wanting to bring on the firepower for that. Whereas Shanahan is all about the running game. I mean, 49ers fans are funny because they've been very, very split on our quarterbacks, which, I mean, I get it. It's a very split fan base on Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. And most 49er fans will look to Jimmy Garoppolo's faults and say, this is exactly why Kyle Shanahan wanted to get rid of him. And I say, I don't know if it was all just the faults. I think some of it was that Jimmy couldn't stay healthy. We lost 2 seasons because he was on IR. And that year they went into it, and Kyle's like, well, look, if we're going to have to invest in insurance for Garoppolo, then I'm going to bring somebody in who can affect the run game too. And he went out and got a quarterback who can do that. And you saw that for the first 2 games that Lance was there, that suddenly every single run that we had, the threat of quarterback run was baked in. I mean, every wide zone that we used to run now has a quarterback read option in it, and every power play has a quarterback read option in it. Every wide receiver reverse or jet sweep has a quarterback option element to it. He was constantly requiring the defense to account for the quarterback in the run game because he wants to run the ball. I mean, he if we ran the ball 60 times a game, he would be perfectly happy. It was like the playoffs that we had when we went to the Super Bowl 2019. Jimmy Garoppolo threw like 8 passes in one game, and people were like, well, that was Kyle Shanahan not trusting him. And I said, that was Kyle Shanahan loving the run game, that the run game was running at like 7.5 yards a clip, because that's who Kyle Shanahan is. He wants to run the ball 60 times a game. I mean, he would be happy as can be. And so they've forged their own lanes in that sense. McVay likes to run the ball, but he really enjoys those explosive pass plays. Kyle Shanahan it seems like he just gets overjoyed when they can hit a 70-yard run. Like, I mean, that's just like the golden ticket for him. I think that's where Kittle, you see that in Kittle and Everett. Kittle was not a great receiver in college. I mean, he had like 48 catches in his whole college career. And like you said, a lot of that was CJ Beathard, who then we decided to draft. I don't even want it. That dude, I watched him for 2 years. There aren't words in the
English language to describe how I felt about how dumb that was. Like, the fact he still got drafted ahead of him. Like,
Yeah.
What?
I mean, I just remember like Kyle Shanahan saying he liked Beathard for his toughness, and then when I watched him play for us, I was like, yeah, okay. It's his toughness is the only reason he's still in there, because I saw him just sit there and hold on to the ball and get creamed time after time after time, just wouldn't pull the trigger and he'd get creamed. And I'm like, well, yeah, if he wasn't tough, he'd be in the hospital right now. But you saw that they liked Kittle for his blocking ability. I mean, Kyle said when they drafted him, they didn't know he was going to be a great receiver, but they loved him as a blocker, and so they invested in that. You see, the linemen we tend to be really bad pass blockers and really good run blockers. Our right tackle, Mike McGlinchey, is a perfect example of that. That we spent the 11th overall pick on Mike McGlinchey, and he is a fantastic run blocker. He is a terrible pass blocker. I mean, Von Miller ate him alive. Well, it was last year when we played him. And then, later he was injured, and Tom Compton came in, and he was even worse in pass protection than McGlinchey. Pretty similar as a run blocker, and Von Miller ate him alive.
You want to talk about 28-3?
Gary ate him alive.
Look at Tom Compton. As soon as Ryan Schrader went down, that is what allowed the Patriots to absolutely take over that game against Kyle Shanahan and the Falcons offense. And for whatever reason, he was like, you know what I'm going to do? You know what I'm going to do right now?
Bring him in.
I'm going to take the guy that probably cost us the Super Bowl. I'm going to bring him onto my new team, because he... I like when I saw they were playing Compton, I was like, really? Like, I don't know. It's in the realm of Beathard, right? I mean, but at the same time, it's like, tell me when coaches don't make dumb decisions. I mean, the Rams, literally, like John Franklin Myers was named Rams Rookie of the Year. Then he gets the strip sack of Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, and then the next year in the offseason, they're like, yep, you're gone. And now he's on the Jets. Yeah. It's like, I mean, it's the 4th round pick that you call the diamond in the rough, and then all of a sudden he started making you look smart, and then you're like, we're going to move on from him. Like, Rams fans are still like that. That has to be by far the dumbest move in the Rams, like, McVay era. But then you look at, like, Kyle Shanahan, like, bringing in Tom Compton and drafting C.J. Beathard. What I will say, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this before we continue on, because I kind of believe that based on, like, what I've heard with, like, I don't know if it was Chris Sims that put it out there. I think Kyle Shanahan wanted to draft Mac Jones, and I think he was scared off it because of the public opinion of it. I really believe that. And I think I can see it because Mac Jones would have fit this offense like a dream. And, I told you the last time we were recording, Trey Lance is a fantastic talent, and I think he's going to become very, very good. But Mac Jones right now had the highest floor in the draft. And I look at him and I'm like, I know now he has the back injury, so he wouldn't be doing anything this week. But if he was on this team with Debo and Brandon Ayuk and Danny Gray and George Kittle and the running back, I mean, not going to lie, like, they might win the NFC West if they had him right now. Because he's like, he does everything that you like about Garoppolo, but then he also can throw the deep ball. And he also, I think he makes better decisions. And I think he's somebody that right now in New England just doesn't have the weapons. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, because I think Chris Sims said that, and he and Shanahan are tight as can be.
Yeah, now he said that he didn't have any insider information. He said that, that wasn't from anything Kyle had told him, but it was just his feeling. Now, I don't know. I know before the draft, I thought it was going to be Mac Jones. I mean, I really did. There was a lot of Justin Fields talk, and I was looking at it going, I don't see it. I don't see what Shanahan does in his offense fitting with Justin Fields, and you're seeing that in Chicago right now. That Chicago is running that same wide zone scheme. I mean, when I was watching the tape from week 1, it was like watching our own offense, like as far as the plays. I mean, it was as West Coast as you get, and the wide zone and everything. And Fields has not looked good in that offense. That's not it. I don't see him operating really, really well in that kind of an offense, because of his limitations as a passer. Now, Trey Lance shows a lot of the good signs that you want to see. He needs to get the reps. I mean, like you pointed out the first time we recorded, he only played one game in 2020 that was a showcase game where, I mean, nobody had really practiced. Nobody had really put in time. And, you know, it wasn't the greatest game. And now we're sitting here, you know, as us on the 49ers side going, okay, we're going to be going into him next year in year 3. And he's played a grand total of 4.5 games, five and a half games in 3 years, 6.5 games in 4 years, you know, and you're already most of the way through your, you know, halfway through your rookie contract window. You know, I think what it was is that they knew when they drafted up that at minimum they were going to pick Mac Jones. That's what I feel like. I don't think they had fully finished the evaluation process. I think they were looking at, okay, if worst comes to worst, if we're just getting somebody for insurance on Garoppolo, the transition from Garoppolo to Mac Jones is seamless because they're going to be a very similar style quarterback. The playbook is going to be 100% the same. And like you said, you have a very high floor with Mac Jones because, I mean, I live 70 miles from Tuscaloosa, so I watched a lot of Mac Jones when he was in college. And I liked him from the processor side of things. Because he was physically limited, he had to be a really good thrower and a really good passer, or else he would not have functioned. But the way his processor was just there, and he just has an ability to work an NFL-style offense. And so I think that the original plan was Mac Jones, but I think as they were going through the evaluation process, one thing that you pointed out and that I've seen with Trey Lance is that he's generally pretty careful with the ball. He's not reckless with the ball. And that's one thing that Garoppolo can be, is very reckless with the ball. It's not, people always think that he doesn't see some things when he throws these bonehead picks over the middle. He sees it. He just thinks he can beat it. And I mean, because I'll see him, they'll run a cover one robber, and I'll see him see the robber and then try and look the guy off real quick and then jam it in there. Because he thinks if I just look over here that the guy's going to move and I'll be able to jam it in there because he's got that lightning quick release. And that gets him in trouble because they won't always move. And he'll jam that ball in there and it's picked. And the pick he threw against Denver is a perfect example of this. The Broncos were in cover 3 Mabel, the backside safety. It's a buzz coverage, so the backer's in the flat, and they got the safety coming down into a hook curl, and he doesn't have any route on that side to occupy him. And Debo is running a dig across the field. He's coming behind the Sam, and he's coming into that. Where's that going to be? That safety hook curl zone, and he sees that Debo is closer to him than that safety, and that window, it looks like it's open for about 1 millisecond, and he tries to jam it in there, but it's too tight, and that's why it gets bumped up and tipped up and then picked. He sees it, he just thinks he can beat it, and that's been him, and he's so aggressive on that, and he can be reckless with the football. Lance isn't reckless with the football. Plus, he gives you something in the run game, which, like I said, Kyle wants to run the ball, and so that's that kind of situation going forward. Going back to our defense and your offense, I think, like you said, Cooper Kupp. I mean, he's the guy. He's the magic sauce there. He's having another phenomenal year. I mean, he ate us alive in the NFC Championship game. And a lot of that, too, was OBJ being there as a guy that every time we rolled coverage to Kupp's side, OBJ was there. And a lot of times, with the way they'll do it, it's very similar to the 49ers. They'll have a passing concept on one side that they're working with Kupp, and then they'll have the backside receiver on a dig route. And it's not all the time, but, man, he hit like 3 digs to OBJ, and we just couldn't cover him. And it was because you're rolling that coverage one way, your corner has to be outside leverage, and it's there, and he's beating our Mosley every time. That, man, it was so frustrating because anytime you didn't roll coverage towards Kupp, I mean, he was catching it. And, it's outside, it's inside, it's close, and he's a great blocker. And I mean, he is a special talent. I don't think there's any doubt he is the best receiver in the league. And to me, it's not really that close. I mean, is he the guy that you're going to line up on the outside and he's a Tyreek Hill and burn you? No, he doesn't have that top end speed, but he is the best route runner by a mile. And so how do we try and contain him? It's kind of like Barry Sanders back in the day. You couldn't stop him, but you could try and contain him. You're not going to stop Kupp, but can you contain him? Can you keep him from wrecking your game plan? And if you can contain him and you can get to Stafford with that 4-man rush, that's when you can have success. If you can't, then it's going to be a very long day. And that, just like we had in the NFC Championship game, 16, 17 play drives that just sap the energy of the opposing team. I mean, that was so frustrating as a fan. And you've been there where you've seen it done to your team where you're just like, where it's play after play after play. Yeah, and you're just like, come on, like 3rd and 3, let's do it. No, they get another, and they just keep doing it, and you see how just saturating that is to your team to have those long drives done against them. And that's something that Matthew Stafford has brought over Jared Goff from before, is that Goff was not the guy who was going to operate a really efficient, quick passing game. He wasn't going to be on the regular, and he could make some. I mean, he could throw some nice deep balls. Jared Goff, wasn't obviously not in the Super Bowl, not to pour salt on a wound. But I was always pretty impressed with his ability to drive the ball down the field, especially outside. But as far as an efficient passing game over the middle, he seemed to always it just wasn't there. And with Stafford, you have a really quick release, and he's able to operate that. He is a guy who's willing to take the underneath to a point, and then but he can do sometimes like Garoppolo does and jam a ball in there and try and really force something. The difference between Matthew Stafford, though, is that Matthew Stafford has a bigger arm and he gives you more upside, where Garoppolo seems to have kind of hit a ceiling. Maybe he's going to break through that at some point, but because he hasn't played. He's played about half the seasons that Stafford has, actually less than that, with all of his injuries and sitting behind Tom Brady. But is he going to break through that ceiling? I doubt it at this point, and I think that's why the 49ers are moving on from him too.
Yeah, because you realize you're like, all right, he's grown as much as he can, and I think also part of it, it's almost like I don't know if there's animosity, but like when he's like, the play thing that he said or whatever that was going around.
I think he said, you're playing so bad. That's what it looks like to me. Shanahan was asked about that, and he goes, look, you're asking about, Jimmy's a close friend too. He says they're really close. And he's like, we both say things during a game that don't mean anything. He's like, you're asking me to say, what do you think a good friend might have said when he's really pissed at you? I'm sure he was mad. We were all mad in that game. And he said he thought the clip was a joke. As far as why, he's like, I don't even know why I'm being asked about this. They asked Garoppolo. He's like, I don't remember what I said at what points in that game. So.
Yeah, even if he said it, it's the narrative. But I had to bring it up because it is out there,
oh, yeah. It's everywhere.
Yeah. Well, that's, I know. Just look at, what was it? The Jets, like a week ago, was Quinnen Williams yelling at his coach. It's like, I'm sure that stuff happens.
Fighting him.
Yeah, I think that stuff happens all the time. I think they just don't catch it.
You guys have
always.
seen that with, you guys have seen it with Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah.
Jalen
Ramsey he hit Taylor Rapp upside the head. There's a fly right in my face. What the hell? He hit him. He hit him right upside the head. Like they got into a little bit of an argument. I think it had to do with the Emmanuel Sanders catch that won the 49ers that game in 2019. I'm almost positive it did because, they just, I don't know if they've never felt like they're on the same page. I don't know. I don't know too much about it. I don't know if they like each other or not. I would assume that everyone gets along because they just won a Super Bowl. But hey, you never know.
That tends to help.
Yeah, I mean that heals all wounds. So yeah, looking at their offense, the way I see it, I think the Rams are going to come out and try to run the ball, and I think they need to because they need to keep the pressure off of Stafford. If they can establish the run, you're not going to go into this game and be like, oh, the 49ers are too good, like we're not going to run the ball. Like maybe you do that against Tampa's run defense last year, because that was, I've never seen dominance on that level. I mean, I think they held every single running back last year to under 100 yards. Every single one. I mean, that's like, I'm pretty sure they held him to like 40 rushing yards in the playoffs. I don't know if that's true, but like they were insane. The 49ers, it's 3 games through. I don't think they need that type of attention, but they're very good against the run. You just can't just be like, oh, they have us beat, because then it's like, it's easy to stop you when they know you're going to throw every time. So I want to see at least 25 carries between Darrell Henderson, Cam Akers, and maybe Malcolm Brown gets elevated from the practice squad. In 2020, I mean, that was a trio, and Malcolm Brown, if you ever get asked this trivia question, Malcolm Brown was the first scorer at SoFi Stadium. So little did you know. But Malcolm Brown was brought in for a reason. So if they do use him, I wouldn't be surprised. He's not going to get a ton of carries if they do. But I definitely think they're going to want to try and run the ball a little bit more. And I think the 49ers are going to throw the ball a little bit more. Like, they'll run the ball for sure, and they'll run it. But they don't have, like, here's the thing. They don't have Elijah Mitchell, and they also don't have Ty Davis-Price. So now, you're looking at Debo, who I think is going to get the majority of the carries in this game. Jeff Wilson has gone up against the Rams 5 times and has 25 carries for 77 yards to show for it in his career. You got Mason, who they like a lot. But I really think it's going to be Debo Samuel. And when he does carry the rock, he doesn't do it 20 times a game. He does it like 10.
Right.
So I think it's going to be that type of game. And I think they're going to try to throw a lot. Because if you look at last week, Sean McVay said it on his show, like every game they go into it, they're planning ahead like, okay, this is how we want to approach this team and this team. There's not like a set defense we want to run. There's not a set offense. You saw that against the Bills. They leave the Bills game, and then the next week against the Falcons, they pull out the I formation out of their ass, and no one has seen, under the Sean McVay era, no one has seen the I formation used like that. And they did it a lot. They were in 11 personnel, like pretty much the entire Bills game. And they came out and they're like, all right, here's the I formation. And oh, by the way, number 18 is going to be our fullback, Vince Gronick. And it was just like, I like this. I like this a lot. So I don't think they're going to play a standard bend, don't break defense, which is what I'll say. Like, they're going to play off. They always do. But they're not going to play off the way they did last week. Last week, what people forget is 3 out of the top 5 corners were out. And then, surprisingly, Jordan Fuller was out. So you have all these guys that are out, and now you got Darian Kendrick in there, who's a rookie. He's never played a game in his life in the regular season. Now he's starting across from Marquise Brown. So Darian Kendrick, the guy who ran like a 4.8 40, is not going to be playing bump and run with a guy that runs 4.2. It's just not going to happen. So there's that. And then you had Grant Haley taken off the practice squad, and they're like, oh yeah, go be our nickel. So like you could see, with all those guys out and different guys having to play different roles, you're going to play more off. And they gave the Cardinals everything over the middle, and Kyler still fell into their trap of take what the defense gives you, don't test down the field. And he had some deep incomplete passes that should have been picked.
He just couldn't see over his lineman. That was the thing.
But with Garoppolo, though, like, it just doesn't make any sense to take. Like, why would the defense give him all the stuff underneath when that's his strength? Like, the short and intermediate game is the Niners' game, similar to the Rams. But the Rams do take more deep shots than the Niners do, like you mentioned. And so, I'm looking at this game and I'm like, there's no way you can expect the Rams to come out and play the same defense they played against the Cardinals. That was extra special. Like, they were trying to scheme around it, and it worked well. I mean, the game plan, they didn't allow a touchdown. If you give up 12 points, you should win every game. then, the Falcons game, they didn't play as off. I think this game they're going to play like a combination. So, I mean, we'll see some soft shell. We'll see like Ramsey in the star. We'll see guys, rotated out of the star and all that. Try to give Jimmy Garoppolo different looks, kind of confuse him. I'm sure they're going to disguise. They've been doing that a lot. But I think at the end of the day, this is not going to be an opportunity where Jimmy Garoppolo just has all day to throw and he's just dinking and dunking to glory. I think this is going to be a defense that tries to force Jimmy Garoppolo to make poor decisions, not give him the first read. And I think it's going to be like I said, in the previous recording, I think it's going to be an ugly game, where these two teams are really just battling the whole time. And, ugly doesn't mean it's a bad game, right? Ugly means like it's going to be like a hard fought physical, like, not necessarily like a shootout, but more one in the trenches and on the ground. And, and I think that's what's really going to come down to. But, looking at the Rams defense versus the 49ers offense, what are some things that really stand out to you in this matchup?
So, one is when you look at the matchup we've had the last number of times, they put Ramsey on Ayuk. And it's like you mentioned that you want to see Ayuk take that his game, he's not quite there. He's a guy that you look at as good, not great. And that's how I've viewed Ayuk for a little while. I was on a show yesterday talking about this, that I said, I feel like Ayuk, he was the 25th overall pick in the draft. We should be getting a little bit more out of him. And Niner fans always look at this, and this is where it was really interesting hearing you say this, because it's sometimes good for us to get an outside perspective, because our fans looked at it and they said, well, we got a quarterback who can't deliver the ball to him, because their fans will say that about Garoppolo. Okay, to a point, but also I've never seen him be a guy that you see him so wide open sometimes that it scares defensive coordinators, as far as, are you worried about if you put a guy in man coverage on Ayuk that he won't be able to cover him most of the game? Now, Kyle is usually good enough to where if somebody's just going to sit there and man coverage the whole game, he's gonna scheme that up, and he's gonna find some matchups that he likes that are really problematic. And that's going to be the interesting matchup for me, is how do the Rams work around Wagner at this point in his career as far as in coverage. I want to say it was 2 years ago he was allowing like the league high of completions and quarterback rating when targeting towards his area. That in coverage he was starting to become a liability there in Seattle. Now some of that was Seattle just declining as a defense altogether, and their defensive line not getting a lot of pressure. But at this point in Wagner's career, is he the guy that you're gonna, if say you're in zone, do you trust him being able to cover Debo? Because we're putting Debo in the backfield, so he's got a lot of option routes coming out of the backfield over the middle. Are you comfortable with Wagner in that spot? Or is that going to be a liability? If you're in man coverage, do you trust him on a running back? Do you trust him on Kittle? Now, if we're talking Bobby Wagner 6 years ago, yeah, I would say you put him on anywhere. He's that kind of transcendent player. Does he still have that? He reminds me of when Ray Lewis was getting up there in age. That when we played them in the Super Bowl, we were putting Vernon Davis on Ray Lewis when we could, to take advantage of that. Is this going to be a similar situation? And then how do the Rams then work through that? And because if you are able, there's things you can do to account for that. You can do some of that buzz 3 coverage where you're gonna end up bringing a safety down into that zone, and you send Wagner to the flat. So if the coach is thinking, okay, I got Debo on an option route on Wagner over the middle, all of a sudden Wagner's out in the flat and he's on a safety. That's a different story. And now you've beaten what the coach is trying to do to you. If it's going to be in man coverage, do you end up going with cover 1 and having Wagner as the lurk defender, so he's not having to be in man coverage? Those sorts of things. Are they going to be doing that? Where is that trust? Because he was the guy that was brought in to solidify that middle of that defense a little bit more, especially against a run. Sometimes you guys weren't always the strongest against the run up the middle last year, and because it was kind of like if people could get past Donald, then you could give some chunks. So Wagner's brought in, and then also just seeing how you gel, because I know you guys lost 8 starters this last offseason. And so how is that gelling going on? And are you going to come with the same defense you had in the NFC Championship game, which was different than the previous 6 meetings? We talked about that. Sometimes the losers of an engagement have the advantage because they can look at what they did wrong and change. The winners are sitting there going, well, we've done everything right, let's keep doing it. And it can give an advantage. That's why players will always say it's really hard to beat a team 7 times in a row, because they've now got your blueprint of how you're going to try and beat them, and they're adjusting to your blueprint. So how does that go? The Rams on defense, I mean, they're scary. Like I don't like ever going against Aaron Donald. I mean, he is such a violent player. And I don't mean that in a negative connotation. I'm meaning he plays with such power and aggression and violence that, I mean, he doesn't just beat a guy, he will throw a guy. And he doesn't just tackle somebody, he will tackle somebody. And I mean, there is just a different intensity to his game that dude can. I mean, there's a reason he's won Defensive Player of the Year multiple times, and there's a reason he's got the contract he does, because he is a guy. I mean, you have to account for Aaron Donald. Now, we've been able to take advantage at times of his aggression, and you get him going one way and you can try and keep him going that direction. But it's a cat and mouse game. And so, and now we got big Trent Williams out, which, oh man, when you lose the best left tackle in the game, it's just, you don't replace a guy like that. You can't, it doesn't matter who you got on the bench. He's not going to be as good. I mean, it does not matter. And if I'm Aaron Donald, I'm looking at a 49ers offensive line that's got a rookie at right guard. It's got a journeyman guy in Brendel at center who has not played very well. You got Mike McGlinchey at right tackle, who has been a massive liability in pass protection. And now you got probably Colton McKivitz, who's a backup left tackle coming in. I mean, if I'm Aaron Donald, I'm going to my defensive coordinator. I'm saying, put me anywhere, put me everywhere, because like you can now move him anywhere on that defensive line, and we can't account for that. You can't call a play and say, okay, we're going to make sure we double down on the 3 technique on the right side because that's where Donald's going to be. Well, now they can move into D end, they can move to the other D end, they can move to the 1 technique. He can play anywhere on the line. Now you can't account for him. And he can beat every single one of our linemen. There's nobody on our line who I go, yeah, 1-on-1, we can take on Donald. If Trent Williams is in, I would say, okay, at least the left spot, that's probably a draw. That would be a fun matchup, though. Best left tackle in the game with Aaron Donald. I mean, that would be a fun matchup. But at least you could go there and say, okay, we've got. They're not going to put him over there. They're going to find a better matchup somewhere else. Now it's like put him anywhere. And he's going to affect the game. So that will be a huge challenge. And how does your defensive coordinator use him? How does Kyle Shanahan try and counterpunch off that? Because like you said, our offense with Garoppolo is all about over the middle. We have to get that run game going because it's all about that play action pass, attack those linebackers, attack the safeties in the run game. Get him moving sideways, get him moving vertical, and then hit the passes in behind him. That's what our offense is all about, and that's a lot of why you also see so many passes over the middle, because if you're throwing the digs and the crossers constantly behind the guys that are run defenders in the box, then they start hesitating against the run. And if they start hesitating against the run, there's so many options. Now you've won in the run game and you've used the pass to open up the run game. But you have to get the run game going first. You have to get them moving. You can't just let them drop back and everything, because we aren't a deep ball throwing team a lot. Now, I don't know if that was going to change much with Lance. I don't think it was going to be suddenly just bombs away. I think it was mostly going to be the same offense with a few more shots because he is a good deep ball thrower. Yeah. But, is it going to be, because I remember NFC Championship game. We started out the game, and Garoppolo threw a beautiful pass down the sideline to Ayuk in stride, and he couldn't stay in bounds, ran out of bounds. That didn't change the way you guys played defense. You guys were still like, no, we're coming out. We're still going to press man tight the whole game, 6-man front. Very much like we've seen Miami play most teams this year, which isn't surprising to me considering the difficulties it caused for us. And then Mike McDaniels, who was our offensive coordinator, then went there and said, okay, this was a big problem for us. We're going to do this to everybody else. But, is that going to be the game plan, or is it, something else? And how does Kyle Shanahan respond to that? That's going to be interesting. It's going to come down to, can our offensive line establish the run? It sounds so cliche, but it really is. We don't have that Cooper Kupp. We don't have that guy that we're going to be able to say, okay, look, they want to stop the run. All right, well, we're going to be able to go to this receiver over and over and over again. We've got to manufacture touches and get the rhythm going. Ramsey's as good of a corner as there is. And yeah, he can get aggressive and he can bust some coverages sometimes. And I'm sure you guys have wanted to pull your hair out over Ramsey, especially week 1.
Just a tad.
But he's that player though that he gives you a lot of splash plays both ways. I mean, he's going to give you, because he can make some. I've seen him pick off some Garoppolo a couple times. He literally just bailed on his responsibility. It was plays that I was like, dang. There's very few corners who can make that play, and he can do it because he can see it and read it well. Other times he does that and he'll guess, and you guessed wrong, buddy, and it's no bueno. But he can lock people down, and so the Rams are a team that, man, you always scare me. Even when people are like, we beat him 6 times in a row, we got this. I was like, no, we don't. It's the Rams. They got all that power over there. And I remember last year it got really heated. We talked about that 49ers fans were all about SoFi was Levi South.
Oh my God. I hated hearing that. I've never been there. I don't live in LA, and that just annoyed the hell out of me. So I can only imagine how the fans that live in LA who have been there, that love that stadium. I love it too. I just have not been there, but I can only imagine how they felt.
Let me ask you this. Did it annoy you more with, and maybe you don't want to, answer this a certain way considering your audience. Did it annoy you more with our fans or your own?
Definitely the 49er fans.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was constantly like during my live streams. Then all of a sudden it started to come up in my live streams where I have some 49ers fans that are freaking awesome that will show up in my live streams. CG Ruthless. I got Coach T Bates. Probably 2 people that have checked out your channel before. Camper Report. I'm trying to remember all of them. They're gonna get upset if I don't say them all. I'm not gonna remember them all. Not off the top of my head. But anyway, I have people that like the Niners that support my channel, and that's how it should be, right? I don't want people that feel like, okay, this is just a Rams channel. I also cover the Jets on that channel, so I do have it's open to anyone, but there were some people that were coming in and just Levi South, this is our house. And I'm like, I just,
and then it didn't help when Matt Stafford's wife came out and was like, this was terrible. Matt had to go to a silent count in our own stadium, and because that just encouraged the 49ers fans. They were like, yeah. But I was sitting there but it's the Rams have so much firepower, and they can just take over a game. If you let them, they can blow you out of the stadium, and they have some defensive players like we saw in the 4th quarter of that game that can wreck a game and take over the game. And I was as nervous as can be going into that game. Week 18, I was super chill because I had just hurt my back, and they put me on some hydrocodone, and I was just We're fine. I was as chill as can be. I was actually trolling one of our beat reporters on Twitter the whole time with a whole bunch of nasty comments the whole game. I was like high. I was high as a kite. But anyways, but like that MC Championship game, I was just like, dude, this is not a lock. This is not like this is going to be a dogfight. And I expect the same thing Monday night, because you're talking about the Rams are looking at this, that they can take control of the division and put the 49ers in a deep hole.
Yeah.
Because if I'm the Rams and I'm saying, okay, who do I got? Who's the biggest threat to me in this division? I'm saying it's the 49ers.
Not even close.
Arizona
far.
tends to just completely falter at the end of the season every year. You can just count
Call
on
of
that.
Duty
Seattle
season.
is a mess. Yeah. And so if I'm them, I'm saying, look, we have a chance to go 2 games up with the tiebreaker on these guys. They have to win 3 more games than us the rest of the year. Like, this is the game. And if you're the 49ers, you're going, we cannot get in a hole. We went in a hole last year. We cannot do this. And our backs are against the wall. I mean, Sunday night was as bad of an offensive performance as you've ever seen. And so it's like, look, this is going to be a brutal fight. And it'll be entertaining, to say the least.
It will. Yeah, I really think, I mean, it's Monday Night Football. It's in San Francisco. You look and you're like, all right, they haven't beaten San Francisco in San Francisco since 2018. There's some added blood here because I think the rivalry, and it's good for football, it's been renewed. It's been revived. I mean, these teams were bad for a while, while Seattle was just basically that cockroach that no matter how bad they were, they just wouldn't go away. I mean, they knocked the Rams out of playoff contention the last game of the year on Sunday Night Football with Charlie freaking Whitehurst. I will never forget that game as long as I live, because that was the last chance Steven Jackson had to win a ring with the Rams. That was the last chance.
I was a huge Steven Jackson fan.
So sad.
I was felt so bad for him, because I grew up in Oregon and I watched him in Oregon State, and I was such a Steven Jackson fan.
He's
and
awesome.
That was brutal. I mean, God, that was brutal. When we were so bad for so long, just watching him demolish us year after year. I mean, I still remember we drafted a kid out of Miami, Mike Rumpf, one year, and he was playing corner, and Steven Jackson took a run off the left side, and Rumpf reached out to try, dove to tackle him, and Jackson's leg broke his forearm. Literally just snapped his forearm.
Oh my God.
And he kept running for 20 yards, and Rumpf was out for half the season, and he never amounted to anything. And he was a first-round pick, Rumpf was. And I remember just watching that oh my Lord. I mean, that dude, if you want to talk about one of the most underrated backs of all time,
it's gotta
Steven
be him.
Jackson was a man.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a man. The size and the power and the speed.
And the fact that he was such a
there.
No, you're right. I mean, the fact that he was such a good receiving back, and then the guy gets no credit because Marshawn Lynch happened, and I'm like, I'm sorry, beast mode was Steven Jackson before Marshawn Lynch. Get out of here with that. Marshawn Lynch can play behind the Rams offensive line with the SoStar Rams and then come back to me before we go Hall of Famer on him.
And I mean, for years, Steven Jackson, he was the only positive thing there, because you always had what's his butt hurt all the time, quarterback.
Oh, Sam Bradford.
Yeah, Bradford. He was always hurt. You were always playing backups. And Steven Jackson was still running for 1,400 yards, 1,500 yards. And people were just like, yeah, well, okay.
Yeah, he's on the
that's
Rams.
Steven Jackson. Yeah. And,
he helps
but it was
my fantasy football team, but that's it. It's
you put him on a good team during that time, and he's a 2,000-yard rusher.
Oh, yeah. And then when people try to say CJ2K is better, I'm like, I'm sorry, what Jackson did for as long as he did it, 8 straight seasons with 1,000 yards. I mean, think about the offensive line that he was using. I mean, he used to get hit in the backfield so much. It would just be ridiculous. He'd bounce off guys. I mean, the tell with him, as we get back into it, but the tell with him is Sheldon Brown used to just kill people. Like, Sheldon Brown on the Philadelphia Eagles is the hardest hitting DB I've ever seen. And that's saying a lot because he was in the same damn secondary as Brian Dawkins. But
Brian Dawkins was a beast.
Yeah, but Sheldon Brown would hit guys like he had to win the lottery. I don't know. He just, like, Reggie Bush was puking like I was this morning. He was, like, throwing up everywhere after he got hit. Do you remember that? When he caught the screen pass from Drew Brees, and then here comes Sheldon Brown running downhill. He, like, killed him. And then he hit Jackson one time. Like, he hit Steven Jackson. And Steven Jackson had a head full of steam, and he's running up. He hits him. Jackson goes flying, holds onto the ball, gets up and goes, like, he's all, like, pumped. I'm like, that's how I knew Jackson was just built differently. I've watched Sheldon Brown knock guys out of the game, and they would just be like, lost the wind, got knocked out of him or whatever. It was just like, no. You hit Jackson, he got up and he, like, did his celebration, everything. Like, he just got a huge first down, then gets hit, has the ball in his hand, gets up, spikes the ball. Like, I don't know. It was just...
Steven Jackson was the chief business negotiator because he would always make people make business decisions.
I can tell you there are a lot of corners that'd be like, I ain't tackling him. But you know who would? Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey would go after him. I mean, they never played against each other, I can't imagine. But Jalen Ramsey would go after. And that's why I think I love him so much for this defense, is that, you know, you talk about the little things that Sean McVay's offense needs. Like, the blocking is everything. You have to block in order to play receiver with Sean McVay. Otherwise, you're Tutu Atwell and, like, you know, you're used in one role, but you can't be consistently on the field. But with the defense, like, you got to be able to tackle. And at corner, it's just a position that guys, like you said, are just making these, you know, business decisions. Like, I could take on this running back coming at me at full speed, but I don't know if I'm going to. I think I like my teeth. I think I like my ACL in place. I like my ribs not broken. And they just sidestep out of the way, you know. It comes up in film room. All right, I'll bring up the interception I had to win the game. But Jalen Ramsey makes it his freaking mission to make every tackle, to take ownership. And I personally love it because I'm one of those old school guys. It's why I don't believe, like, Deion Sanders is, like, fantastic all time. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's the greatest ever because he was not a good tackler. And I think that matters. Like, you have guys like Lester Hayes who aren't even in the Hall of Fame. Guy could tackle. Guy stuck to guys like glue, you know. Ironically, he's not in the Hall of Fame because of the glue hands. You know, but it's so stupid to stick them. It's like, give me a break. But like, everyone was using it. But I mean, like, I don't know. You should have to tackle. Like, if I'm explaining a play to a casual fan that doesn't really know football, they know tackling. If I have a casual fan coming up to me after, why didn't he tackle him? And I have to say anything more than because he wasn't able to, like, I have to say, well, he made a business decision. You're not doing your job. And Jalen goes above and beyond. He puts himself in the position to potentially get run over, and he's always in position to make a big play. And he lays the wood too. Like, that guy can hit. So I don't know. It's something about him and, like, Sheldon Brown as well. I just love, like, corners that can actually tackle. I think Ward is pretty solid in that, right? I mean,
yeah, Ward's been pretty good because
Mosley,
it's like saying,
Mosley tackles.
Mosley was good. Sherman, when he was with us, was a really
Sherman's
good tackler.
Another one, and I think Jalen kind of patterned himself around guys like Sherman and Revis because Revis tackled, Sherman tackled, you know. So I mean, Patrick Peterson in he didn't really.
He had moments.
But, like, he wasn't, like, you're not going to be like Patrick Peterson, the tackling cornerback now. You're not going to. But Jalen Ramsey could play safety. He could play linebacker. I mean, he's in the Where's Waldo role, not as much this year. But last year, the reason he played the star so much is because they're like, this guy plays like a linebacker. I mean, he's so good in space. He doesn't let guys get by him.
And that was something too. A lot of times when we went nickel last year with Debo in the backfield, Ramsey was inside.
Yeah,
they weren't going to leave him outside, because when we did that before, we usually tried to put Ayuk, who is a good blocking receiver. It's like you say with McVay, you have to be able to block as a receiver to see the field. Shanahan's the same way. Your receivers better block, and so it was. They would get Ayuk, and we were able to spring some runs off of that. NFC Championship game, they're definitely putting Ramsey inside, and it was a dogfight. You could see those guys battling it out and fighting, and there being some chippiness and everything in the run game, because they're both taking it very seriously. One's very serious about his ability to block. The other one is very serious about his ability to not get blocked. And you can feel sometimes that you can tell these players see this game differently. I remember the one game Aaron Donald got ejected, that he was fired up to play the 49ers. That there is a palpable thing here, and you can't tell me that has nothing to do with Kyle and Sean and their history together. Not that there's a bad blood between them, but there is. You can't tell me that there's not an extra emphasis when they come in, that these guys want to one up each other. I think it feeds into the team.
There is an ego there.
Feeds into, there is, and both these guys are going to constantly have their careers compared to each other. Their teams are going to be compared to each other, and I think this is becoming one of the funnest rivalries in the league. I mean, the league still keeps putting like Chicago and Green Bay up on prime time.
I love that you said that. I tweeted that out. I was like, are you kidding me? Who wants to watch this except for those two fan
Nobody
bases?
cares about this anymore. And even Chicago doesn't want to. They don't even want it anymore.
Why would
They're
Chicago
like,
want
we're going to get embarrassed. Why do we want everybody to see us get embarrassed?
I know. Just kind of hide us behind some of the other games. Put us in that 405 spot, and then put like Tom Brady on the 425. That way no one notices.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at the Ravens and Steelers. Are you telling me with Trubisky that the Steelers are going to be any sort of actual rival with the Ravens? No.
Well, the whole time you're sitting there hoping they put in Kenny Pickett.
I mean, just like I look around the NFL and I don't see a better rivalry. I don't see another one
right
of
now.
Two good teams. No, and I mean, and it's been going on for a few years. So, I mean, this is going to be a game, and it's going to be a dogfight. And like I said in the first quarter, I think it's going to come down to which quarterback plays cleaner.
Yeah,
because both these guys have a history of some bad picks. It just is who they are. Stafford, you tend to get more explosive plays out of him, but he can throw some bad picks. Jimmy Garoppolo can throw some bad picks. It drives fans nuts. I'm sure it drives Rams fans nuts when you see Stafford. I mean, because I think he's had, 22 interceptions in like 24 games, something like that.
The thing that's so annoying about Stafford's picks is I watch that every week. Tom Brady throws one right at a guy and he drops it. It feels like anytime Stafford, that's why I was like, everyone's like, oh, yeah, and we talked about this last recording. You know what I'm going to say? It's like everyone brought up Jaquiski Tart, dropping the interception. Oh, well, if he catches this, it's like, yeah, first off, there's 9 minutes left in the game. So there's still plenty of time. Second, it was an arm punt. So it's not like you guys are right in the red zone. And third, Jimmy Garoppolo threw one literally right at Jalen Ramsey and that he would have picked sixth and the game would have been over. So it's like, I hate when people use all the whole, oh, well, because I watch Brady, I watch Rodgers, I watch anyone, Mahomes, and it seems like those guys get away with so many dropped interceptions. I don't know if it's the way Stafford throws it, how it's easy to catch, but my God, when he throws a pick, it's like it's every single time the ball's anywhere. He does not get any of those lucky drops. So it's like, miss me with that he finally had a defender drop one of his interceptions, and it ended up happening in a crucial moment. because he simply, it's like anytime and then he gets ones that are so unlucky where he throws it to Cooper Kupp and then it bounces off Cooper Kupp's hand, and then the safety who wasn't even really playing that well, all of a sudden the ball just goes into his hands and he's celebrating like he just did everything. And it's like, it's like, it's every week I watch that. So, it sucks because it's like people define quarterbacks nowadays so much based off interceptions. But I think the thing with Garoppolo is that he's only giving you 1.2. It's like 1.2 touchdowns a game. I think it's 1.5 touchdowns a game per every time he plays the Rams. He's giving you 1.2 interceptions. Stafford averages 0.8 interceptions per game against the Niners, but he averages 2 touchdowns per game. So that's a half touchdown difference. And, he plays better against other teams for sure, but I don't think he plays poorly against the 49ers. And his interceptions, while they have been frustrating in the past, at the same time, it's like I look at the Higbee one against, I think it was Atlanta, that, the Higbee one, that's just not, like, that's a bad throw. Like, why bad decision. Why are you doing that? You didn't need it. Why are you doing that? The other one is just a really nice play on the ball by Michael Walker. Then you look at the Bills game. Bills game was just bad, But then he has interceptions.
Throwaway game.
Yeah. Then he has interceptions where you throw a deep bomb anticipating that Deshaun Jackson's going to win his matchup early on in the year against the Cardinals week 4. And he just stares up at it and like doesn't try to make a play on the ball. And even still, you have to understand that if you are, he's giving you an opportunity, even if you can't make the play on the ball, you have to play corner. You have to draw, like, offensive PI, you still have the ball. Like, you're going to lose yards, but you'd rather lose yards than give this guy, you know what I mean? You got to do something.
Right.
And so I just think it's one of those things where, he threw it up in the Super Bowl. You saw that to Van Jefferson. And he was playing hurt, so I'm not going to get too hard on him. But, like, Jesse Bates goes up and picks it off. Van Jefferson's, like, staring up at it. You're like, what are you doing? Like, Stafford's giving a guy an opportunity. Then you look at the throw he makes to Skoranek over the middle in the Super Bowl. Gets flipped up in the air, and it gets picked off. And you're like, how did that even happen? He, like, scooped it up in the air. And so it's frustrating because, like, on one hand, you watch, like, Kurt Warner he won a Super Bowl and he won an MVP with the Rams. He threw 38 touchdowns and 22 interceptions when he won the MVP. And it's like, he threw 22. I understand the game's different, but it's like now, everyone is so quick to be like, Matthew Stafford's an interception machine. He had the same amount of interceptions as Trevor Lawrence. But it's like, then people call, like, for instance, Justin Herbert can do no wrong. Had 15 interceptions. Joe Burrow had 14. Josh Allen had 15. When are those ever brought up? And how different is 17 and 15? And how different is 41 touchdowns to, say, like 33 or 35? Like, I feel like Stafford has more bang for the buck than some of those guys. You know what I mean? And so, like, that's the thing is, like, he showed that last year. He may throw 17 interceptions, but he also threw 41 touchdowns. Really, I think the only one that has the argument over that is Tom Brady, because he threw more touchdowns, and this fly is really annoying, but he threw more touchdowns and fewer picks. He threw 12 picks, so I don't know. It's also like the game has changed, you know what I mean? So interceptions, it's not as much as the past, but interceptions are still aplenty. And, it's annoying because Stafford didn't get a touchdown last week. He had 2 touchdowns dropped. He had a touchdown that he also had that, was overthrown a little bit on Atwell. He could have had 3 in that game. Now, all of a sudden, it's 7 and 5 instead of, 4 and 5. It's still 4 and 5 going into this game. So, on one hand, it looks like Stafford's playing like crap because he's got 5 interceptions. On the other, he has 3 of them in one game, 2 of them in another game. And he played clean football against Arizona, and he is second in the league in passer rating, and he's throwing down the field. He's not just dinking and dunking. So he's a guy that I have defended tooth and nail, even going back to when he was with Detroit, because, I would watch him and I'd be like, I don't see why people have such a pick on this guy. I see a guy with not a lot of talent around him in Detroit. I see a guy that was robbed of his first playoff win against Dallas. That call was terrible. I saw a guy that went into Seattle in hostile environment with Zach Zenner as his running back, and they expected him to win. And then I saw a guy who scored 4 touchdowns in the playoffs against the Saints, and in his first ever playoff game, and they gave up 45. So it's like, is that Stafford's fault, or is that the? So
No.
that's why I'm so glad, now that he's with the Rams and the interceptions. Yeah, I think you just got to take what you get. I mean, with Rodgers in a sense, and I think you know what I mean by this when I say it. I'm not discrediting Rodgers. I actually really like Aaron Rodgers. But I started to think about it, and I'm like, why do you think Aaron Rodgers has only thrown like 11 interceptions in the last 2 years? Because he doesn't take everything, right? He doesn't go for the necessarily like the jugular throw. He's not going to take that tough throw. And as great as Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers are, they need to trust guys. Matthew Stafford last week throws 28-yard pass, a seam buster over the middle, or short post over the middle to Kendall Blanton, who he threw to in the Super Bowl. As you know, he threw to in the NFC title game. I'm sure you love that. But Blanton was on the Chiefs practice squad, and they just scooped him back up, and then here he is. He's catching a 28-yarder. How about Ben Skoranek? Dropped a touchdown, a no-doubter touchdown, got behind the secondary of the 49ers in the NFC title game. Do you think Stafford's not going to him? Nope, he's going to him again in the Super Bowl. Tom Brady would want that guy cut. You know what I'm saying? So
right.
I feel like this is somebody I've watched since, with the Lions. Oh, third string tight end. We're down late in the game against Tennessee. I'm going to throw the seam buster to Hunter Bryant, not TJ Hawkinson, not Kenny Galladay, not Marvin Jones, Hunter Bryant. Oh, I need a third down. I'm going to throw to the corpse of Danny Amendola. Oh, I need a deep pass downfield. I'm going to throw to Marvin Hall. Like, this is why, like, I get on that whole thing, like, oh, Stafford's got to because Stafford takes risks, but they actually pan out more often than not. And I feel like you're not getting as much with Rodgers, as great as he is. Why does he? Well, he always is in the 30s now with touchdowns. He's not in the 40s. And the interceptions, it's like, yeah, great that you don't throw interceptions. And I love the guy. I think he's fantastic, but he's particular about who he throws to, just like Brady. Mm-hmm. And if he's not throwing interceptions and he's throwing, say, 6 fewer touchdowns, you got to decide how much does a touchdown weigh out the interception, or how much does the interception weigh out the touchdown, So I feel like Stafford gives so much to this team, and the interceptions, you just kind of take it as you do. But with Garoppolo, those interceptions are brutal, because he's not doing those things. He's not throwing 40 a season. And so,
right.
If you're running the ball the way you are, and then Shanahan's like, all right, Jimmy, I'm going to let you throw here. We're running the ball at a 7.2 yards per clip, okay? So, like, you know what I mean? Like, and then he throws the interception, and he's got to be on the sideline like, you got to be kidding me right now. Like, that's the difference.
Yeah, well, and, Garoppolo, he's had moments where he can play just lights out, and his ability to fit the ball into tight spaces over the middle is quite impressive. And he's a guy, he's easy to malign because he's not going to give you a ton of flash. He's not going to be the guy that drops in those 42 yards on outside the numbers perfectly in stride to your receiver for a big thing. We haven't seen a lot of that. Of course, our offense is not really big into throwing the ball deep. Hasn't been. You look at even Kyle back with the Falcons, when he got to when the Falcons, it was like 2012 and 2013. The Falcons threw the ball the third most times in the league. They had the third most passing attempts in the league, both 2012 and 13. Kyle gets there, and by 2016, they were 27th in the league in passing attempts. And Matt Ryan wins MVP. I mean, they dropped 24 spots in passing attempts, and they went from in 2013, I think they were the 32nd most rushing attempts, so the fewest rushing attempts as a team in the league. 2016, when Ryan wins the MVP, they're 12th in rushing attempts. So like Kyle took a team that was built to throw the ball and hardly run it, and made them a running team. And Matt Ryan won MVP. Kyle wants to run the ball, and that's what he wants from his quarterbacks. He wants his quarterbacks then to operate an efficient game and just don't turn the ball over. And that's the biggest thing you see from Garoppolo. Garoppolo, it feels like he wants to be in a system where he's throwing it around like Matthew Stafford. That's what it feels like. It feels like he wants to just, that because he's talked about 2017 about how great it was for him then, because we were throwing it like 35 times a game, and he's just dropping back and he's flinging the ball around. Now, he was also 7 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, so it wasn't like he was a great touchdown to interception ratio. But some of the throws that you're making were, just pinpoint throws, and he's a rhythmic passer. He has to get into the rhythm of feeling the game, and Shanahan loves to take his quarterbacks almost out of rhythm because he wants to keep the run game in rhythm. There were so many times it's like, run for 2 yards, run for 1 yard. Okay, now we get an 8-yard first down. Okay, run for 2 yards, run for 3 yards. Okay, now we get a 6-yard first down, 40-yard run. Yay! And that's our offense. But Garoppolo with his, I think there's just so many times he hates not having a successful rep. Like, he wants to be able to move the ball when he's given the chance to throw. He wants to make something of it. And so he doesn't throw the ball away very often. He tries to jam it into the tiniest of windows. And some of the throws I've seen him make, and Kyle Shanahan has said this. There was one throw he made in the divisional round versus Green Bay. The throw was unbelievable. It was dropped by a receiver, but there was a guy that was coming through unblitzed. He's got a post route on a hot. He drops back, hits his back step, launches the ball, puts it right over an underneath linebacker who's jumped up and trying to bat it down, gets it just over his fingertips with an up zip before the backside safety closes, and puts it 1 foot in front of the numbers on the receiver. It was an incredible throw, drop. He can have that, but then he'll have just this bonehead interception over the middle. It's because, okay, yes, you can make that throw once. You're not going to get away with it every time.
It's true.
If you're 0.1 second behind on that, that's a pick.
Yeah.
And your margin for error is so small, and that's Garoppolo's biggest weakness, is that he thinks he can get that ball into the tiniest of windows, and he will jam it in there. But like you said, he's not giving you those explosive plays down the field, and that's not part of our offense. It's like, Kyle Shanahan's talked about it a number of times. Like, he just needs to eat the play there. Like, it was a bad play call. They beat us on defense. Eat the play. But he doesn't. And that's the most frustrating thing with Garoppolo, and why you'll also see him. Sometimes he'll have really clean games, like Chicago last year.
Yeah.
When we played Chicago, he puts up like 320 yards, a couple touchdowns. Or I think he ran for 2 touchdowns and threw for another touchdown. And he's hitting an explosive play to Debo. He'll look great. And then he can come out and have like the Colts game the week before that was just god-awful. That's the Jimmy G experience. You had the Sunday night game where he's missing busted coverages, but then throws like one of the most beautiful back shoulder throws to our fullback, like 30 yards down the sideline. It was pinpoint down, and you're going, and then you run out of the back of the end zone, like.
And that just negates everything, because that's all anyone's going to ever talk about.
And it's like, that for us as Niner fans, that's the Jimmy G experience. Like, he can give you a really good play sometimes where you go, okay, there's something to this guy. And then he can turn around and just make a bonehead play. And so I think it's going to come down to, because when Stafford tends to throw picks, they tend to come in bunches. But he'll go games, because he can have that 5-pick game, but he can also go 3 games without any picks and throw like 12 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So Stafford, like which Stafford are you going to get, and which one do they force out of him? Because he can be the best in the league almost. Or he can be a middling QB, and that's not. I'm not trying to knock your QB. I'm just saying, like, that's what I see. His floor is, to me, usually a little bit higher than Garoppolo's, because Garoppolo can have a really ugly floor sometimes, but his upside is a lot higher than Garoppolo's, and where's that going to be? Who's going to make that bad decision? Who's going to make that play? Because this is going to be a dogfight. It's going to be a tight one. And can our offensive lines protect the QBs? Like I've said, I do not trust our offensive line against Aaron Donald. Of course, we have a loaded defensive line, but they didn't show up in the NFC Championship game. I mean, you guys, your offensive line played one of the cleanest games I've seen from a team that we'd faced in a long time. I mean, we were on a stretch where we were taking down every offensive line we'd faced for like 10 weeks. And suddenly we got to the Rams, and it was like we could not generate pressure. And the offensive line for LA played so good in that NFC Championship game. Can we force something in there to make something? It's going to come down to the trenches. You got star players on both sides. This is such a fun matchup because, I mean, you got the stars on both sides. You got Fred Warner on one side with the defense, and Nick Bosa, and Hufanga is just looking like the second coming of Palomalu. He's just playing everywhere. I mean, hair included.
Yeah, that's true.
And but then on the offensive side, you guys got, you got Cup, and you got Stafford, and you got blanket on your receiver.
Robinson.
Allen Robinson. I mean, I liked Allen Robinson when he was in Chicago. I think it's a matter of time before they really click. I think there's some timing issues there. It's just not quite right, but it's not for lack of talent. So I think that's just a matter of time. And on defense, you guys got Ramsey, and you got Wagner, and I like Fuller as a safety. I think he's one of the most underrated safeties out there.
I really like Nick Scott.
Now, Scott's been a good player. I watched some of his tape. Fuller, the thing about him is that he's a physical guy. And he's a guy that saved a number of what could have been explosive runs. And so, he has a nose for where to fill and when to fill. And he's a better coverage guy than I think sometimes he's given credit for. But, you got Aaron freaking Donald. Just the most violent player in the league. And man, he's the one that you're always like, can we? I don't know how we're gonna. I'm always curious. Like, Kyle, you better be in your game on this one, man, because you got a beast, a freight train coming at you called Aaron Donald. I don't think Nick Bosa quite scares opposing teams like Aaron Donald does.
No,
Aaron Donald, like when that's what the difference is like,
because interior pressure is just different. Like,
it's devastating. It is devastating.
You can't step up in the pocket, and now you're taught, like, okay, I can feel the pressure on the sides. I'm going to step up, give myself a chance to throw. When he takes away that middle, you play into their hands. So now you have, Vaughn last year coming off the side. You have Floyd coming off the other side. I mean, it's like, all right, well, now we got to just dink and dunk at this point. It makes our offense incredibly easy to telegraph and just ordinary. And I think that's the thing is Aaron Donald can turn your offense into an ordinary offense.
Oh, yeah. And, it's like, Nick Bosa will affect things in that. And we saw this, we've seen this before, is that there's so much chipping. He gets so much chipping. He is the most double-teamed player in the league. I saw a graph on that it wasn't even close. His double-team rate was way above everybody else's. And a lot of that is the chipping. They're chipping him with tight ends, they're chipping him with receivers, they're chipping him with running backs. Now, the thing that does end up putting guys out into the pattern later than normal. So it changes the passing concepts that you can have. It makes it harder to stretch the zones. You end up having to then, if the defense doesn't bite, you end up having to dunk a lot of the way. So it can be similar. Denver was struggling with that. They weren't able to stretch our zones quite the same way because they're constantly chipping Nick Bosa. So he can affect that, but he's not going to affect quarterbacks as far as the interior pressure, like you're saying. Donald has that ability to get it to where quarterbacks are like, man, I can't step up. I can't, it's going to be 3 steps and it's got to be out. And that lets your defense sit on so many things. And then if your defense is able to press well, like Ramsey is one of the best press corners in the league, I mean, that it fits all together, and that's why I always look at the Rams and go, man, I don't see us just running points on them, because this is a tough defense to. I mean, they've got the pieces in there to work well. The question will be for me with the Rams defense are the role players, you know, the guys outside of the star roles, you know, DT number 2, that kind of thing. Your will backer. Those guys, are they going to be able to step up and not be picked on? And how will that go? Because like you did have a lot of turnover, and you know the Rams have like you also see these are two teams that have a very philosophically different way of building the teams. You know, us 49ers fans for like years have been like, every time you guys make a big splash trade, you know, 2 first-round picks or 1 first-round pick, we trade for this guy. Every time we'd be like, yeah, they're in win now mode. They can't do this forever. We've been saying that for 6 years, okay? We've been saying you guys can't do this forever for 6 years. Yeah, they can't do this forever, and yet you still are doing it, you know? So it's like, we're on our side, we're like build through the draft, but we've also had a bunch of first-round picks that haven't exactly lived up to the billing of first-round picks, and I'm like, okay, well, which way are you going to do it? Are you going to...
Could be Seattle drafting 9 running backs.
Yeah. I mean, but we had like Reuben Foster and Solomon Thomas didn't work out. Mike McGlinchey to me has not been a number 11 overall player. That's out fair. Of his draft. Is Brandon Ayuk a 25th overall player? I think he's good. I don't know if he's lived up to that draft billing. Nick Bosa obviously has. Javon Kinlaw, he's been good. Is he a top 10 draft pick? Hasn't been that yet. Now, he was injured all of last year, but he should be, by the time he's done, he should be in that category of which you talk about as one of the top interior defensive players. I think he could get there, but he's not there yet. We have had a lot of first-round picks that haven't turned out. You guys have been able to acquire really good players and talent with those first-round picks. You know, there's just 2 different ways of going about it. Both teams are stacked with talent, but they built 2 different ways. One wants to throw the ball a little more, wants to run the ball a little more, but same offensive system. You know, it's a fascinating matchup.
No, it really is, you know, and I think, you know, to wrap it up, I think the Rams are going to win 24-18. I think this is an ugly game. I think it's going to come down to the wire. Because I understand, you know, final scores can always be kind of, I mean, they don't tell the full story, right? 24-18 could be like the Niners are down 24-11. They score a touchdown and kick an extra point with no time left. I don't think that's going to be the case. I do think there's a chance they'll have the ball. I'm going to have to go through it. We're all going to have to go through it, whether you're a Niners or Rams fan. I think they're going to have the final drive, and I think the Rams are going to stop them. I think it's going to come down to, you know, pressuring Garoppolo, forcing him into, you know, a turnover or even just a turnover on downs. And I think that's how it's going to go. The Rams have had a lot of experience, probably more than any team in the league, playing on 4th down. Because, like, I don't know why, but Cliff Kingsbury, I'm convinced, doesn't like using a punter. I don't know why there's one on the roster, because the guy goes for it every single time.
It's because play calling is tough.
They legitimately
play calling is really tough.
Went for it 5 times last week. Like,
yeah, because play calling is really tough. You know, he had to tell his quarterback that.
So it's just, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, you know, they've already gone up against it like 5 times last week, maybe 4, but definitely at least 4. So 4 times on 4th down. Then the week before that, the Falcons are trying to come back. They go for it on 4th down. I think a couple, and I think the Bills went for it on 4th down too. So the Rams have definitely. I'd be absolutely shocked if any team has gone up against a 4th down conversion attempt more than the Rams, and so I think that'll put them in the driver's seat. They understand, you know, what's expected of them, and I think they can pressure Jimmy Garoppolo into a turnover on downs or just an outright turnover. Maybe you get the pick 6, Jalen Ramsey, you know, that we're supposed to see. In the NFC title game. Who knows? But I don't know. I think regardless, this isn't going to be a game where the Rams just come in and blow them away. And I don't think this is going to be a game where the 49ers come in and blow them away. Fly is driving me insane. But, you know, I think when you look at it, I mean, these are 2 teams that know each other very well. The last time, I mean, even before the NFC title game, the Rams dominated that game and let the Niners back into it in the second half. So if it's like that, I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe the opposite. Maybe the Niners get off to a good start and the Rams have a flip-flop type of game, because the first 3 games, it's like they start off well in the first half or the first quarter, and then they're one of the lowest teams in terms of EPA per play in the league when it comes to the second, third, and fourth quarter, which unfortunately is 75% of the game. So, they're 2-1, but there are a lot of fans that are a little uneasy about this team right now because you win, but you win 20-12 against a team that you're way better than. I mean, I'm watching this Arizona game. They're this close, really, last week to having a 41-12 or 41-18, whatever type of game. They missed 3 touchdowns in that game. They actually missed 4 if you think about it, because they had the overthrow to 2-2, which that's not even a big deal, right? You take a shot, you miss, who cares? But Allen Robinson drop in the end zone, Kupp drop in the end zone, and then Cam Akers fumbling at the goal line. You put those together, I mean, that right there, if you take away the Tutu Atwell one, that's 21 points, and they end up winning 20-12. So, you're looking at they're getting there, they're close. And then, before that, week 2 against the Falcons, I mean, they had some moments where it's like maybe you don't throw that pass in the end zone to Tyler Higbee covered. I mean, that gets picked off, and it's like you're knocking on the door. You could have gone up 35-3. So it's not in that sense, but the point is they've had really close opportunities to score and they have failed. But it's early on in the year. Rust is expected. And, I wouldn't rule out them just coming out and just giving the Niners a beating, because they're capable of that. If everything works out for them, they can beat up anybody. We saw what the Bills did. That's what the Rams can do if everything is clicking on all cylinders. I mean, just look at the Buccaneers game. It took 4 fumbles for them to be in that game. They were down 27-3, and it took them 4 fumbles. So, maybe they get off to a good start like that, but I think it's going to be 24-18. I think, ugly game, 1 possession, Niners have a chance at the end, and we'll see if they end up splitting the series or not, but I think the Rams can sweep the series, and that would definitely be taking the monkey completely off the back, taking on the ground, and just beating the crap out of it.
Bold predictions. I can respect that. I can respect it. I think it's going to be 49ers 24-17. I think the defensive line is going to set a tone and decide they're not going to let LA run on him, and they're going to get to Matthew Stafford, and the coverage units are going to take it personal. Now, with that, I think Garoppolo gives you a ball, and that's going to turn into 7 points. I don't know if it's going to be a pick 6. I think it's going to be. I see Kupp getting a touchdown on a stupid smash concept that they run every time down in the red zone, and it's like every time those corners just they bite on that underneath route, and they leave Cooper Kupp on that corner route to the back of the corner of the end zone. It's like every time. I think he's got 3 touchdowns against us on that stinking smash concept. It's like every time you guys run that, and he just keeps getting it. So I think he's going to get one on that. I think Cam Akers is going to score a rushing touchdown. And I think there's going to be a drive that you get close but not quite and kick a field goal. I see Tevin Coleman possibly breaking off a big run in this game. I think Tevin Coleman will be running back number 2.
You guys got Tevin Coleman back?
We do. We have Tevin Coleman back.
I didn't know that.
He didn't play in Denver because he has sickle cell. Okay. So Kyle didn't want him to play in the altitude with his sickle cell, but he was a guy who was with us. Now what he brings, he's not an overly solid. Like, he's not going to get you 3 yards every time. He's the guy that'll get you a loss for 2 yards, a loss for 3 yards, and then hit a 60-yarder. He does have the ability to be a home run hitter. I think he's going to hit a home run in this game. I think he's going to get a touchdown. I think Debo gets a touchdown somehow, whether it be a trick play, you know, like we saw the pass to Juwan Jennings. I think we're going to see a trickery play in there somewhere. I think Garoppolo is going to make the unexpected throw somewhere where the Jimmy G experience is going to come up. You're going to have the turnover, and I think you're going to have a tight window throw to Kittle somewhere, and then a field goal. Other than that, I think it's going to be a dogfight, and it's going to be one that comes down to, can we get an explosive play in the run game? Can we limit your explosive plays in the pass game? That's how I see this game going, and I see it ending on a strip sack by Ebukam. That's how I see the game ending.
You're going with the guy that hasn't fumbled yet with the Rams, Stafford.
I'm just saying.
I don't think he's fumbled yet. He doesn't fumble much.
I think it's going to be a strip sack to end the game. That's what I think.
You should bet on that.
That's my bold prediction.
That's pretty.
I ain't betting on that.
You should. If that hits, man. Oh man. I mean, do you know the odds on that? They gotta be high.
The odds are 100. So
they gotta be high as hell, because if you think about it, it's like it's Ebukam. You're not even picking one of, like, you're not picking Bosa. You know? Well,
no, because they're going to double Bosa. Yeah. They're going to double Bosa, and if it's obvious passing situation, we come out with like our version of the old Giants' NASCAR package, where they would bring in 4 defensive ends. It's going to be Bosa, it's going to be Amenahu, it's going to be Ebukam, and probably Kinlaw, who yes, he's a defensive tackle, but he's got some speed, and I think they're going to play some games with Amenahu and Ebukam to get to Stafford. Now, Kerry Hyder could be in there. He was productive for us a couple years ago, and he's a role player. But I see Ebukam wanting to make a statement against his old team in crunch time. So that's what I see.
Interesting. After watching the Cardinals game, I just was picturing that, and just watching like Matthew Stafford put him on skates like he did. I think it was it Isaiah Simmons or was it Zaven Collins? Just like totally put him on skates and then got the first down. I was like, oh my God. And there was another one where he like circled around and then threw the sidearm. I mean, Matthew Stafford's sidearm, there's not much that's more beautiful than that. But but yeah, I think this game is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Have you
never seen Jimmy Garoppolo smile? I mean, I don't know.
God. I'm tired of his smile, man. Oh, man, when you're losing anything, there could be like the nicest person ever, and they look like an evil person. It's like with Robert Saleh. It's like, I like Robert Saleh nowadays with the Jets. I could not stand him. I called him Discount Joe Rogan when he was
when he would always be pumping the fist.
Well, to be
and
fair, it's not his fault. He's just going crazy, and then the freaking camera is always on him. It was like Rob Ryan. The guy did not need to be shown that much. And they're like, Rex Ryan would be on the other sideline coaching, and they would be like zoning in on Rob Ryan, who wasn't even like the defensive coordinator. He'd be like the defensive backs coach or like an assistant, and they'd be like, we need to show you Rob Ryan. I'm like, no, I don't need to see that.
And he would always be there with his long hair, just like staring off somewhere.
Yeah, and maybe picking his nose. Or, I don't know. It's like, are you kidding me? But yeah, once again, the media making enemies out of people. Anyway, that's gonna do it. You got 24-17. I got 24-18. So we both have 24 points. That seems to be like the good number there. In a dogfight game, it's like always 24. I noticed, But yeah, that's gonna do it for us. It's a lot of fun. Johnny, where can they find you on Twitter?
So on Twitter, it's at Jonnydels. On YouTube, it's Jonnydels Football Academy. So that's where I am mostly. And I will be posting a breakdown review video of the Monday night game from our perspective on probably Wednesday, depending on when I get the film. So if Rams fans want to tune into that, you're more than welcome. And but yeah, I'll be posting that. Hopefully it's of a 49ers win. So I don't know if you'll be that interested. But yeah, that's how I roll.
I watch the tape no matter what. So I mean, I watched the Rams Buffalo game 3 times. People are like, "Why'd you watch that 3 times?" I'm like, I wasn't getting it the second time. I really needed the third time to comb through. But yeah, you guys can follow me at JK Bogan. You can Google me, Jake Ellenbogen. Find all the stuff there. I actually just started doing the Believe in Rams podcast, so you can check that out. I also have a podcast dropping soon with my co-host Alexis Kraft for the Downtown Rams podcast. A lot of different podcasts, but that is where you can check out all my stuff. If you're watching on Johnny's YouTube, please do me a favor, come over on my YouTube and give it a thumbs up. If you're watching on my YouTube, please do me a favor and go over to Johnny's YouTube and give him a thumbs up. Be sure to hit the subscribe button as well for both of us. And it's been fun, man. We definitely got to do this again the next time they play. It's coming soon. So hopefully we don't have to record it 4 times. And Zencaster doesn't destroy us.
Yes. Well, I thank you so much for opening my DM. That was the first step, man. So thank you so much for the collab. This has been really fun.
Absolutely. We've spent the whole day together, so.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, you guys take it easy, and we'll be back next time these two play.